Good morning and welcome to the KittyHawk Investor Series. My name is Will Weisman. It is a great pleasure to have you joining us today. So the KittyHawk Investor Series brings together the CEOs of our portfolio companies, our advisors, our LPs, and our prospective LPs. It's a great treat to have you here. We're going to have an amazing conversation today with Rick Osterloh. Rick is the head of business services and hardware at Google. He is a member of Google Leads, which is CEO Sundar Pichai's inner circle of direct reports. And you can imagine that that is a pretty extraordinary table to have a seat at. Google, I believe, is the fifth largest company in the world, according to market cap, and has a market cap, I believe, of $1.2 trillion. So as we heard last week from Peter Diamandis, I mean, this is an extraordinary time, increasingly being driven by the accelerating pace of technological change. Rick is a guy who is really has an extraordinary vantage point to have great insights as to what's happening in terms of technology and industrial change. And it is a great pleasure to have him here. He's someone that I've known for close to 22 years now. So he's not only an extraordinary individual. I knew from the get-go he was going to be someone who was going to have a really exciting professional career. He's exceeded that, but he's also really an extraordinary individual and someone who has been a great friend, great supporter of KittyHawk, and just a great human. So with that, I'd like to ask you to please join me in welcoming Rick Osterloh.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Will, thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to our chat, and I've been so impressed with everything you've been able to do so far with KittyHawk, and look forward to talking with you today.
Amazing. Thank you, my friend. It is such a treat to have you here, and I'm really excited to be able to dive in. I know I think we've got about 55 or to 60 folks who are joining us today, and people super excited to get to hear from you and learn from you. So thank you for making time. I thought we might start off and maybe just do a little walk down memory lane, and always find it fascinating to understand kind of professionally how people have gotten to where they are and kind of understand the trajectory of their career. So maybe you can kind of take us through how you got here.
Sure, yeah. I guess, my professional journey started after college in consulting, which was, I thought, like absolutely terrific training. It was almost like having another degree, but I also realized I hated that line of work. It was really hard, and I felt kind of no real ownership over the outcome. But where my career really started, I felt, was after business school, where I got into a technology startup funded by Benchmark and Kleiner called Good Technology. And, I was one of the first employees of that company, and learned just such a ton from some great people, and realized like that was what I wanted to do. I really wanted to be working on products in technology companies, trying to make a difference. And I just loved, learning about new technologies, learning about new things, and creating products. So from there, my path went from like a startup into like larger companies, and that wasn't sort of by design or anything. It just sort of how it happened. Like our company it could have been great, and it ended up not doing that great. But it was acquired by Motorola after 6 or 7 years, and I worked at Motorola. This is like during the difficult 2007 to 2010 period. I worked at Motorola. And helped develop all the first Android products at Motorola. And it was a horrendous environment. Like the company was struggling horribly with the transition to smartphones. It was like a complete turnaround, and we were trying to start a division making Android products at the same time. It was like, and like everyone was leaving. And so it ended up being this incredible career experience because all the people above me left. They just quit and left. And so I was like left to run the thing, and our project ended up being really instrumental. And so during that period of time, I learned just a ton about how to manage and how to lead and how to build products at scale. And from there, I did something completely different, which was like again just an awesome life experience and learning experience. My family and I moved to London for a few years. I joined Skype right when it spun out of eBay and Andreessen Horowitz Silver Lake acquired the company, and that was an awesome experience. I ran product management there, and learned just a ton about distributed businesses. Like that, Skype worked in a very unusual way compared to other companies at the time, with people spread out all over the place. The product was this incredible decentralized technology, which I thought was really interesting. That experience lasted shorter than I had expected. We were acquired really quickly by Microsoft, and so I worked at Microsoft for a little bit.
What year was that?
That was in 2012 when the acquisition happened, or I guess it closed right at the end of 11. But I was at Microsoft for much of 2012, and really did not like the experience. That was in the final years of Ballmer running the company. I thought the leadership of the company was super political. It wasn't a great place back then. And so I quickly realized I wanted to move on and do something different. And that's when I started working with Google. Google hired me to run product management for Motorola, which they just acquired. And so, I went back. It was like I was like, I had my foot in two worlds, when I was a part of all the people from Motorola knew me from like the Android days, but Google hired me to try to like fix and change that the Motorola of old, so it was very interesting. And that did not go the way I expected. We ended up at that time, which is 2012 to 14, Google did not realize that they wanted to be in the consumer electronics space directly. And so they ultimately ended up selling the company, we fixed it. We did a lot to try to repair some of the issues that Motorola had. And then it got sold to Lenovo, which was like kind of shocking to me at the time. And my boss decided to leave. Dennis Woodside decided to leave suddenly. And so again, this was like one of those extraordinary career experiences where I was planning on leaving too, but then they're like, well, do you want to run Motorola? And after thinking about it for a while, I decided that it would be a great experience to learn a lot, but also like I felt like at the time, there was no one else better to sort of help lead the employees through this really tangled period. It was quite an extraordinary event for an American technology company that had been around for 90 years to be sold to a Chinese OEM. And so I felt a duty to the people that I'd worked with for a long time to help them through that. And after about a year and a half, it was not easy, but I had decided I'd had enough. and at the time, of course, like as things would pass, I ended up getting a job at Google to, in a bit of irony, almost do exactly what I thought I was going to do when I first joined Motorola. And now I lead a division at Google called Devices and Services, where we basically build the company's direct hardware products, consumer electronic products. And then we also have initiated a number of services businesses that take Google in a slightly different direction with paid monetized subscriptions, like various SaaS businesses. And so that's been super fun. I've been there about 4.5 years now.
Can you walk us through some of those, some of the products and some of the business services that you're responsible for?
Google. You bet. Google's trying to answer my question too. So yes, we have. There are about 7,000 people in my organization, but we make smartphones, a lot of products for the home. We have a number of wearables products, and then we also have a number of subscription offerings from the company, including Google Fi, which is a carrier offering, Google One, which is basically a sort of unified subscription offering for the company that has an anchor tenant and storage, but also includes other things. And then I'm working on AR and some gaming initiatives. Well, namely Stadia is the name of the gaming initiative. And so, and when the Fitbit acquisition closes, that'll be part of my organization too. So it's a pretty broad range of different activities, all with different dynamics. But it's super. I mean, I absolutely love the job. Like basically, what we're trying to do, we have this view of the future for computing that's super different than how it's been in the past. which is basically like, all the assumptions that everyone's made about when we were in school about like how computing markets work. Our thesis is it's completely changed in the future. It used to be like you'd think of the PC model, and in fact, when we were in business school, we take classes where they talk about the horizontal model. That's just how computers work. There's like an OS provider and a silicon provider and application providers. And that model has been obliterated. That no longer is the reality in many new categories. And there's a lot of fundamental drivers behind why that's changing. I think first off, the breakdown of Moore's law, and in particular Dennard scaling in Moore's law, which is basically that power ends up being constant even with computing power doubling. All that breakdown has profound consequences for computing at the edge and also in the data center. And then that combined with the move of software to AI has made the computing workloads be totally different in the past. So what that ends up meaning is that like system design really matters now. You can't just like throw a number of generic hardware cores at a computing problem and expect to have great results that scale super well. In fact, what happens is you end up needing to design specialized hardware to run specialized computing tasks. And so that's why, I think you've seen so much specialization in the industry and the increase of verticalization. And from a user experience point of view, the number of devices people own and manage has really exploded. And that's actually, like, I just saw research that shows in about 5 years, the number of smart devices in a household is expected to double. And so, what that means is that I think the way you interface with computers has to change. Right now, usually it's just another headache to add a device to your, overall portfolio. But that really needs to change. I think applications need to work the same way across. Authentication has to be easier. You have to be able to have access to data from no matter where you are. And the way you interface with these devices needs to change and be more fluid, especially depending on the use case and where you are.
A much more holistic viewpoint and making sure that it all kind of connects seamlessly and smooth consumer and business user experience now.
Exactly. So, I mean, that is a profound change from where we've been.
So where does that reside within that, within Google? Like, is that something that you're responsible for spearheading? I mean, there's so many different elements that come into that.
Yeah, I drive a lot of it. We have the company's organized into functions like marketing or finance and stuff like that, and then also product areas. So you can think of a product area as a business unit. And so I manage one of the business units, and our business unit, they have like profit and losses. Many of them are Fortune 500 or larger companies size things. And so, I work very closely with two of my colleagues, like on a day-to-day basis with one of my good friends actually from the startup at Good. And this is a great testament to how small a world it is. But one of my friends from Good Technology, from 20 years ago, we shared a cube for a long time, is now running one of the other divisions at Google. And we work together just like we did when we were like 28. And it's totally bizarre and awesome to have like a friend as your closest collaborator. And so his name is Roshi Lockheimer, and he runs platforms and ecosystems, which is responsible for like the Android distribution, all of our partnerships there. He also looks after several other things like Chrome OS and stuff like that. And so we work very closely together. Like he provides a lot of the core fundamentals of the OS, and my team usually turns that into products and is the, if you will, internal OEM. And then there's a bunch of there's like a core technology team called Research and Machine Intelligence that we work a lot with. They make like all of Google's AI models and are looking at cutting edge research of how to apply different work to our products. And we work a ton with them in things like speech and imaging and stuff like that. And, obviously core aspects of smartphone experiences or AR.
How much of what you all are doing is developed internally? I mean, one of the things, I guess, knowing the audience is listening to this, we got a bunch of CEOs and investors and folks who are always kind of thinking about, Google as a potential partner, Google as a potential investor, a potential acquirer. Can you help us think about what things you look externally for, what things you kind of look internally for? Maybe add a little light around that.
I mean, I think it's a good question. I think, Google's obviously now a very complicated company. We're in a lot of spaces. One difference between Google and other companies, I would say, is that we do have a history of partnering with folks. And but that partnership usually takes the form of like, we provide a platform or some core technology to someone else who then can prosecute their business on it. And so, you can think of like the Samsungs of the world working with our Android products, or HP and Dell working with Chrome OS, or our cloud team supporting a huge number of partners and customers. That's the kind of thing we're very good at. I think what we, typically speaking, I would say the company views itself as a technology company. And I think that's a very core thing. Like I think the world has not quite, funnily enough, I don't think the world totally understands Google, in that many people refer to it as a search company. And I think, that is absolutely our most successful product, and one of the wonders of the world almost, how well it works. But the reason the company's been able to do well in that category and others is simply because the company's capable of building unbelievable technology and applying it in various different domains. And so, like, the reason why search works so well is because we took system design seriously and completely reorganized how a data center works and how you would build a distributed computing system that works really quickly around the world. And like that went so far as, it was almost like a precursor to how the world is shaping now. But, that went all the way through to vertically designing how a computer system works in the data center, and, specifying the server design, specifying the board, and increasingly like developing specialized chips to run workloads that are unique to us, or that require processing that's different than what you get from a standard merchant silicon solution. So that development of technology is essential to the company's functioning, and what that means is we tend to want to develop it. And occasionally, certainly, like in my area, we partner all the time with people, because I'm integrating a lot of stuff from different folks. Sometimes it's large industrial companies like a Samsung of the world, or folks like that. Sometimes it's Qualcomm, sometimes Intel. Other times it's it's from smaller companies at a more fundamental level, like in speech processing or algorithm design. And so, the spaces I look after, we do a lot of partnership, and it's more of like a buy-sell type of relationship. But anyway, the company would view itself primarily as a technology company. So I think in general, we tend to want to develop technologies that go into our products, but we partner a lot at the customer and channel level, I'd say.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you. How about you mentioned AI earlier? Like, love to hear how that is affecting your business, how you're leveraging it. Are you starting to see people's roles changing, or people getting replaced by AI within your part of the business?
Definitely not within my part of the business. I do think there are applications of AI that certainly could, go in the direction of making a company more productive, which in some cases could mean displacing workforces in the long term. But to be honest, I haven't seen much of that yet. I think, like, for instance, we offer a system that allows like customer support centers to automate some of their workflow, answer top questions and things like that, route calls, and that's a really successful product. What it ends up doing usually is just improving service levels within organizations. I'm not aware of like companies that have adopted it, reducing their workforce. But I do think in the future, like, there are a lot of jobs that could be automated. But that's not a space that I really deal in. What I deal in a lot of now is more distributed AI work, where you're basically taking stuff that was primarily running in the cloud and try to make models work in a distributed way, like on a phone or a computer or a smaller device. And that's a really fun challenge. I mean, in general, like Google's done a great job, say, with voice and natural language processing and trying to understand what you're saying, like if you're doing a voice query or something like that.
Amazing.
It's cool. Like, I think we've done some great work there. And part of my work is trying to figure out how to make that work really well on a device, like run without the data center involved. And that, again, that's a super hard problem, impossible to do with like current technology. Like, you couldn't make that work on like an Intel chip that runs on your laptop. You have to design the whole system to be able to make something like that run correctly. And
is that pretty close, or is that still pretty far out?
No, actually, I don't think it's far out. This is the type of thing that I think is going to start to really become mainstream. And it's not like it's a switch. It'll be like application specific and use case specific. But I'd say in the next 2 to 3 years, you'll see a huge change in distributed AI and machine learning. It'll happen a lot more at the edge than it has in the past. And that's exciting when you think about like the implications for privacy and the implications for user experience. If you could do like generally speaking, you need a large data set, you need a lot of capability, and you bring all that data together, you try to figure out what it means, and then you try to predict user actions and like respond when a user interacts with you. And so, in our case, what we're trying to do is obviously that's still a very powerful capability, and a lot of AI will continue down that path. But also we want to try to do it in a more federated way, where you have local devices actually doing a lot of the processing and trying to infer what users are trying to get done. And we can have a lot of synergy between some of our past learning from our data center work and then translate that into a lot more autonomy at the edge, and then eventually turn into learning at the edge, which is then consolidated at a central place. And I think that's that'll be really fun. Like if you can apply that to something like location, like you can get all the benefits of stuff like calculating your various location history on the device without having that be centralized in one place. So I'm excited about where this goes. It's already being applied right now in speech and natural language processing, and also in imaging. And one of the things I think we're renowned for pixel cameras is our imaging prowess, and a lot of it is because of cutting edge research in image processing, and most of that's happening on the edge. So it's a lot of fun. It's like I think this is one of the reasons why I'm excited about the space. It's just like a really complicated problem with a lot of positive benefits for users.
Amazing. How about spatial web? I've been getting to poke around a little bit in VR and AR, and getting to check out some of the emerging companies in the spatial web space. And I know you all just recently acquired North. It feels to me like we are potentially, it's like the early days of the web in to a certain extent. And love to kind of get your perspective, how Google's thinking about this, how you're thinking about this, and where you think we're going.
Oh, it's such a fascinating domain. I think, there's a lot of co-synergy in the technology between VR and AR.
Mm-hmm.
VR went through its like insane hype moment, and then it's kind of collapsed. And I think for kind of good reason. Like it's just not that interesting right now. It's hard for people the technology hasn't been perfected, number one. Number two, I think the use case of being in your own world for very long is not one that many people are interested in entertaining for more than a brief period. And so frankly speaking, I think it hasn't proven to be super useful yet. AR has a different potential, in my view. I think if you envision, and this is the world that we envision, at some point, like you'll have a companion device that can replace a lot of the core functions of a smartphone, and that's the type of thing we're going to try to build. And this is not super novel for Google. I mean, we tried this with Google Glass, and I think made some major mistakes then, and also the preconditions to building that product are wildly different now. I mean, like if you think about, we didn't have a Google Assistant back then. We had no ability to do like image processing in the same way we can do now,
Mm.
and many other facets. We didn't have AR and maps at the time, as an example. But like I think you'll see in the far future, you'll see the emergence of a new device category that brings together all these technologies and makes it easy to consume when it's appropriate. I think the world will have figured out how to handle the privacy aspects that really sunk the original ideas behind Google Glass, and stuff like display technology and input technology with voice processing are so much better than where they were in like 2013 and when Glass was first kind of being rolled out. So like on the device side, I think that's really interesting. There's an enormous number of component technologies that I think are important to making that product come to life. And you know, and a lot of them haven't been perfected yet. I mean, how you really get a display that works well in front of your face is something that a lot of people are working on that is hard to get right. But I do see, you know, if you fast forward 10 years, I think this kind of product is definitely going to have a place. How big of a place is TBD? But I think it could be meaningful for sure. I think you know, if you look at where smartwatches are now, I think in 10 years, that's probably where AR glasses will be.
Yeah.
And,
I totally buy into that. I mean, I will be a user for sure. Many of the people I know will be a user for sure. I love the idea of intelligence being mapped into my physical world and adding that kind of digital layer to it. So I'm ready. I'm sorry to hear that you think it's 10 years out. Hopefully,
I just put you on the dog food list.
Yeah, perfect.
You're on it.
So how about, you know, any technologies, I don't know, maybe any huge, big pain points that as we think about all the entrepreneurs and investors here that you think need to be solved or we should be focused on, or things that are, you know, kind of a pain in your side still? Or just represent big opportunities that you're really excited about, emerging fields? Or
there's a lot, besides all this stuff we talked about that's in like direct field, I think, actually, I'll mention one more, which I think is just an unbelievably important and fascinating field, which is, you know, the consumerization of health information and wellness information, I think is absolutely critical.
Mm.
And I think like healthcare is a very complicated domain, you know, obviously highly regulated space, super important to people. In the period we're living through now with a pandemic, there's never been a field that's been more critical to society, I'd say. But what the pandemic, I think, has also showed is that there's an enormous potential for innovation in this space, and we've only just scratched the surface of it. I mean, being able to take the cycle time for vaccine development down to, you know, 9-10 months from what the best before of 3 or 4 years is kind of an amazing accomplishment. And shows one example of like how innovation is possible in this space that has never been seen before. And I think I'm really excited about this idea of giving users empowerment about their health information. I sort of feel like there's so many constraints over what you're allowed to know about yourself. I think it's not great. And I think the FDA relaxing some of their regulations during this period of time has allowed a lot of innovation to flourish. So I'm hopeful that there'll be a better balance between regulation and innovation in that particular space. And I'm definitely like, the reason we're acquiring Fitbit and we have a lot of other investments and research in the space is I feel like we can really make a difference in helping people manage their own health and wellness. And, you know, you think about, just an example would be like, I think like the idea of diet and nutrition is basically a completely unaddressed space. You know, like how does what I eat directly affect my health? And you can pretty much look at almost any study and they'd suggest that the food you consume is a huge factor in things like your weight and your health overall. But it's very difficult for people to connect what they're ingesting with the impact on their wellness. And you could, like, zeroing in on a use case, like, it really would be nice to know what foods I consume actually spike my glucose.
Right.
And very, you know, I'm not, I fortunately don't have diabetes, but I've tried a number of continuous glucose monitors just to see, like, could I learn anything? And it was like life changing to see how how it actually works. Like, oh my gosh, if I eat a bowl of white rice, like my glucose is going to get to like 180, and that's pretty high, and it stays there. And understanding how much portion size matters and different types of food was just a fascinating learning experience. And so making that simple for a user, like, oh, my sugar's in a good range, or it's not, or like this food is going to cause this kind of reaction.
Yeah, I've just started tracking that stuff. I've just got a prescription for a CGM, and it's amazing just to see, to start to actually collect the data, right, and then to actually correlate it to how you're feeling and start to get some real insights around, when am I in an optimum state? What is driving that? And it's what you're putting into your body frequently and your exercise and all that. So bravo for those efforts, my friend. I'm ready for that, because it's like there's lots of information out there, and there's some good companies that are aggregating it in certain places, but it's still so fragmented. And so to have, one or two big companies kind of pulling that all together and presenting an easy to use dashboard and connecting to all these devices or providing the devices, I think would just be extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think this isn't a space that I'm directly involved, but the whole field of mental health also feels like it could go through an enormous innovation wave, and there's many companies trying to pursue this, but it does feel like treating it as a proper medical condition with appropriate access to care and the ability to drive self-care. I mean, the benefits to society, and if you look at like the growth rates of depression in society, it's really extraordinarily concerning.
Yeah,
and
heartbreak. Suicide rates and how much money goes into all the impact it has on people's healthcare. And I'm looking at this really fascinating company right now that uses AI and machine learning, basically, and devices like your watch, basically, to be able to predict when a patient is about to enter kind of a mental health crisis, and to kind of redirect them. These are people who are already being treated and have severe depression, but to be able to say, 10 days out, 14 days out, okay, we're starting to see some behavior and some things that now we can connect to. They're about to get into a seriously depressive episode. What can we do to get them back on track? And you think about the value of that in steering someone's health is really amazing.
Totally agree. That seems like a great problem to solve. I'm sure there's some awesome entrepreneurs that can solve this kind of problem, just looking at signals of what you're doing on your phone, or patterns of how you're moving and how that's changed. I mean, it really seems like there's a lot of potential here, and I'm hopeful that we can innovate our way out of a lot of problems that are coming from mental health issues in society.
The thing I love about this space in particular is this great alignment between positive impact and creating great businesses, right? It's like you're clearly benefiting the world. You clearly have the opportunity to create an enormous and very valuable business. And there's just kind of more and more opportunities that are at the intersection of those two things, which I love.
Totally agree. I'm also really fascinated just with, and I'm not directly involved at all in this space professionally, but the kind of emergence of blockchain and cryptocurrencies is just fascinating to me, especially with what's happening with central governments and fiat currencies now. Yeah. I mean, basically everyone's so deep in debt that it feels like the next obvious step for nearly every country is going to be to debase their currency and print their way out of the debt space. So, there's going to be an enormous appetite for currencies that are not controlled by any particular country, and then with a printing press, and then the implications for that as like second order effects I think are pretty profound. I think there's a real possibility that how transactions are executed and how currency flows could be very different in the future, and it's just really interesting to see what people are doing in this space. And again, I'm a hobbyist here, so I'm certainly no expert, but
I agree. I mean, it's fascinating. There was the initial wave, right? And then it kind of imploded. And now we've got this whole another wave of innovation with, I think, much more kind of substantive business use cases and talent behind it and capital behind it, and people are building real businesses. And I think the potential for impact is really extraordinary. So with you, I'm early days of trying to get really smart about it, and it's an area obviously of tremendous complexity and change, but so much exciting potential.
Totally agree.
Rick, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This was just a terrific conversation. I know you're a super, super busy guy, so I'm extremely grateful to have you join us today to share some of your insights and wisdom, and always a pleasure to have you with us.
It's been great talking with you all. Thanks so much. And Will, thanks for creating this community and for starting KittyHawk. It's been a great experience to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. All the best to all of you. Be well. Take care. Thank you.